for him.
And we worked very closely together. I have huge respect and admiration for him. And he and I worked many long hours with the Syrian opposition, and I respect his opinion, et cetera. He is correct that they won't stop fighting the Assad regime. I understand that. We understand that.
They not only won't stop fighting, it's their primary goal.
Well, it is, except...
And I know too many of them, John. Go ahead.
I understand. It is. I'm not denying that. But they also are fighting ISIL. They're up in Aleppo right now fighting ISIL. They're fighting ISIL in other places. They threw them out of Idlib province. They are engaged in fighting ISIL. And our belief is, I bet you, I hope Robert Ford believes, that they will actually get stronger as a result of ISIL being removed from the field.
Are you not going to protect them from airstrikes?
Well, I think what we need, yes, I think what we need, that's a legitimate concern. And it is a concern that I would need to address with you in a classified session for reasons I think you well understand. And I think Robert Ford well understands that.
I think the Free Syrian Army would like to understand, too.
Well, and if we have a good classified session and other good things happen here, who knows? The important thing is for us to recognize that if ISIL continues doing what it's doing, and I think you know this, without being stopped, and if we hadn't stood up when we did stand up and work with the Peshmerga and help them to push back and retake Mosul Dam and so forth, they were threatening Baghdad, and they were threatening more. And if they did that
John,
sufficiently...
we're talking about Syria.
No, I know, but I'm about to come back.
Army.
I'm about to come back because
thank you. Thank you. I'm running out of time.
That pertains to their capacity then to focus on Assad, and it might be not the Free Syrian Army, but ISIL that you see in Damascus. And ISIL bringing al-Nusra and other people to them because of the level of their success. Clearly, many people have told us in the region, success breeds success. And many of the people who've come to ISIL have come because it seemed as if they weren't being opposed. We believe that transition works to the benefit of the moderate opposition, works ultimately to all of our benefit by removing ISIL from the field.
You cannot ask people to go and fight and die unless you promise them that you will defeat their enemy and defeat them right away. You can't say, wait until we defeat ISIL. People will not volunteer for such things.
I don't believe that it's going to be ultimately a wait and see, because I don't believe, number one, that the people supporting the opposition in various parts of the region are ever going to stop until the Assad problem is resolved. And number two, I don't believe ISIL's going to, I don't believe that the moderate opposition will obviously stop in that effort. So therefore, there will be these two prongs. There's no way to avoid that.
I hope there's two prongs and not ISIL first, that message is not given to these brave young people we're asking to sacrifice.
Well, if we don't stop ISIL first, there may not be much left of the other prong.
John.
Senator Murphy.
That means we can't take on two adversaries at once.
It's not
that's
us.
Bogus and false.
I know your two colleagues would like to go at it for the rest of the session, but
No.
I'm sorry.
We have a great tradition. I believe in John's adage that a fight not joined is a fight not enjoyed. So we always have a great time.
Senator Coons, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Menendez, and thank you, Secretary Kerry, for appearing and for outlining and for discussing with us in detail the strategy to degrade and destroy ISIL. And I, too, want to thank Ambassador Ford for his commendable service and his ongoing commitment to the people of Syria. I have a long opening statement, which I will simply submit for the record. I share your grave concern about ISIL, the threat it poses to our regional allies and to the United States, and the actions that they took in the massacring of Christians, Yazidis, Turkmen, and am proud that we have stood up to them, and am eager to hear and learn more about the strategy and exactly how it will play out. First, Mr. Secretary, if I might, in your visit to Baghdad last week, the Prime Minister announced a proposal to establish a National Guard style of force of Sunnis that would reclaim and protect predominantly Sunni areas. And I think reconciliation between Shia and Sunni in the formal government and in the on-the-ground conditions in Iraq is absolutely essential to our having a prospect of success. Can you explain how long it will take to establish this National Guard-style Sunni force on the ground in Iraq, how this model will work, and if there would be any role for our National Guard in training or equipping or supporting this Iraqi National Guard?
Senator Coons, that's a really good question, and I don't have all those answers at this point in time. I mean, there are military decisions with respect to who's going to be involved in training them and whether there's room for some National Guard input, et cetera. I'm confident that the military folks would not dream of advising and assisting with respect to the National Guard structure without using their experience within our military as to how it's worked here and how it's been effective.
Then let me ask
that said, let me just say very quickly, the theory of it is to try to localize capacity in a way, as I think you know, that deals with this sectarian divide. One of the reasons that the, quote, Iraq Army, as it's been called, folded in Mosul and before the wave of ISIL was frankly that some of the officers abandoned the men who were left behind, and there was a real sense of sectarian divide there.
Right.
They left because they were perceived by many people, and this was part of the problem with that Iraq at that time, that there was a Sunni Shia divide, sectarian divide within the construct of the military itself. And people to some degree felt even that it went so far as to be the prime minister's sort of personal military entity, and there wasn't a stake in it. So it was the absence of that commitment that motivated people to take off, and that has to be done away with. There has to be a unity. So whatever this National Guard is, it's going to have to still be unified and connected to the state and to a sense of national enterprise, but made up of people who have a greater stake in their local community, in their region, which was absent previously.
I strongly agree and support your hard work in the diplomacy side of trying to address the challenges in Iraq, because if we have a Shia-only government and military, it's not sustainable, and that's in some ways what created the vacuum. Let me move on to two regional questions, if I could. Has the campaign against ISIL affected our ongoing negotiations to end Iran's illicit nuclear program, and how has a potentially expanded military campaign against ISIL made it more difficult to find a final deal between Iran and the P5+1, the deadline coming in November? Or have the mutual interests of Iraq and some of the P5+1 members provided a common point of interest for ongoing dialogue? How has it affected our...
Well, we hope it's going to be the latter. We hope, obviously, very much it will be the latter part of your question, that it hasn't affected it, that it can continue. Our P5+1 folks left for New York this afternoon. We will be engaging in that activity over the course of the next days, and we'll get a better sense of it. My belief is that the nuclear issue is so huge in its consequences, not just to Iran, but to the region, to the world, to all of us. The interest in getting rid of the sanctions, which is the end goal here with respect to Iran, and our end goal of being able to reach an agreement, is significant enough that they won't let things. And to the credit of people in the P5+1, thus far, there's been a compartmentalization. Russia and China are both very constructively continuing to be active and involved in the negotiations and constructive within them. And our hope is that that will prevail going forward. But the answer is not yet defined fully.
Let me make sure you're not misunderstood, because I don't think you meant exactly what you just said. The end goal is not to end the sanctions. The end goal is not to reach...
The end goal is to end the nuclear possibility, but what I said is their end. I think I said their end goal. Their desire...
That might be a helpful clarification.
No. I thought I said their desire is to obviously get the sanctions. You can't do that. You can't lift the sanctions without absolutely guaranteeing that the 4 pathways to a nuclear weapon have been closed off. And that's what we're working at.
Last question. I'm very concerned about the stability, security, safety of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, our vital ally in the region, which has borne so much of the challenge and burden of the refugees from Syria. And I am concerned that ISIL has had efforts to infiltrate Jordan, and there have been some isolated outbreaks of violence in Jordan related to ISIL. What are we doing and what more can we do to strengthen King Abdullah and to partner with him and work with him as we expand the mission we're talking about here and as it has some impact not just in Syria and Iraq but also in Jordan?
Well, we're working very, very closely with our friends in Jordan, and I was in Jordan and I met with King Abdullah a few days ago, last week, I think Wednesday night, after I'd been to Iraq. We spent the evening talking about the various things we need to do together. They are determined to be helpful to us, and we are determined to be helpful to them, and we will be. We're committing additional funds, we're committing additional equipment and capacity, and you know, everybody shares concerns with all the neighbors in the region. I mean, ISIL, that's one of the reasons why this is so critical. And I can assure you that an already extremely robust mill-to-mill, intel to intel, and you know, supply assistance program and economic program will be even more robust going forward, and you all have the budget and you know what we're trying to do.
Senator Barraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for coming. Yesterday's New York Times headline, Kerry says U.S. is open to talking to Iran. You just, and I agree with your comments about the nuclear issue is so huge. You do talk about compartmentalization and also that Iran's goal is to eliminate the sanctions. We've already seen the administration roll back sanctions, January, $7 billion in sanction relief. Administration recently introduced and announced another $2.8 billion in Iran sanction release. There are serious concerns that the administration could further relieve and remove sanctions in terms of trying to get concessions relating to Iran and the fight in Syria or Iraq. You know, clearly, Iran and the United States don't have the same goals that we have in Syria. So I'm curious, what are you hoping to achieve by reaching out to Iran regarding ISIL?
Well, Senator, let me clarify something because it's very important to understand it. Every aspect of the interim agreement that we arrived at with Iran, which required Iran to do certain things, they have done. Every aspect. There's no, and the thing that's outstanding still is the IAEA compliance, where a recent meeting was not as forthcoming as people would have liked. But with respect to the agreement they entered into with the United States, they've done all the things they said they would do. We have people daily inspecting in Fort Al. Before that agreement, we had none. We have people daily inspecting Natanz. Before the agreement, we had none. We have people in Iraq on a periodic basis with the plans being delivered to us, with the commissioning completely halted, and before that, that wasn't true. I mean, I can run down a list. We've had access to centrifuges, to centrifuge production, centrifuge storage. We have mining and milling and you know, a clarity here as to their activities that simply didn't exist. That's what we've gotten out of this. Their program has been halted where it was when we began, and they have reduced their stockpile of 20%, going down to 0. That's an extraordinary thing. For all the people who, frankly, said to us, it's never going to work, the sanctions will come apart, that is not what's happened. The sanctions regime is not only held, there have been additional sanctions. Now, yes, was there an agreement to release a portion of initial round of some of the money that had been escrowed and held? Yeah, $4.6 billion. Was there an agreement for the extension of a plan that continued this cooperation of 2.8? Yes. That's a total of about, what, $7 billion over, 9 months or something. The fact is that during that same amount of time, tens of billions of dollars have been withheld. There's more than 100, I forget the exact figures, more than 100 and some billion that Iran believes it has a right to and wants that's being held in a freeze account until this gets resolved. So I would have to say to you, Senator, this has been an enormous success thus far. Our hope is that in exchange for whatever schedule might be worked out, all of which will have to be subject to public scrutiny and a final agreement, any pathway to a bomb will be eliminated with a sufficient breakout time that we have the ability to come to you and say, the world is safer, our allies in the region are safer, and this is a deal that people believe can be upheld. That's the goal. We're not there yet. I don't know if we can get there. I hope we can get there because the alternatives are, more complicated.
I don't want to get to a point where the sanctions have been removed and they're still on a path to
That will not happen.
Could I ask you, switching to a little bit to follow up with Senator McCain, do we have any intelligence on how the Assad regime is going to react? Should the coalition launch airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria in terms of commitments that Assad will not intervene specifically? We know ISIS doesn't have the capability to shoot down our jet bombers, but Syria does. And are there precautions in place to prevent that?
The answer is, Senator, we're going to take precautions, but what I need to do is take that on with you in a classified session.
A couple final questions on hostages. Do you know how many American hostages you believe are being held by ISIS or militant groups right now?
Somewhere with about 3 or 4. I don't want to. I think we got to be careful on the numbers.
The concern is that after the barbaric murder of James Foley, the operational details of rescue attempts were leaked to the press, including the Special Operations Unit. And I just want to make sure that the administration is committed to working to stop leaking classified information that undermines our military operations.
I honestly don't know where it came from. I can't tell you that. We have a problem in this city with leaks in every department of government, and we try, believe me, to stop that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Murphy. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The world today is more complicated, more dangerous than at any time during our lifetimes, and I wake up every day thankful that we have leaders like you and President Obama, thoughtful, strategic, guiding our way through it. And so thank you for all the work that you're doing and for enduring this process for as long as you have. Strikes me that we're dealing with a fundamentally new problem in a frustratingly familiar context. The new problem is ISIL. They are on the verge of becoming the world's first autonomous terrorist state. If they are successful, I have no doubt that they will turn their focus on the United States and our allies. But the familiar new problem is the Middle East. And if we've learned anything over the last 12 years of war, it's that the Middle East seems largely immune from U.S. efforts to bend it to our will. And so that's not an excuse to sit idly by. It's just a reason why we have to be very careful about crafting a strategy that's not just well-intentioned but realistic. And so I think that you and the President have got it largely right. I think I'm broadly supportive of the strategy that you've laid out, with one exception. And so I want to just bring us back to the question about arming and trading the Syrian rebels. When we talked about this in open session a year ago, we raised concerns about the potential for the Free Syrian Army to coordinate with al-Nusra, a wing of al-Qaeda, and there was confidence that that would not end up being the case, but we have a variety of reports that that indeed has been the practice, most recently in a joint effort between the Free Syrian Army and al-Nusra Front to take a border post between Syria and Israel. So let me ask you that question. You answered Senator Udall's question about the ways in which we can keep arms from flowing to Islamic extremist groups. But why are you confident, how can you give us confidence that we are not going to train a fighting force that is then going to enter a battle with a known affiliate of al-Qaeda? And how confident are we that ultimately when they get on the field of battle that they aren't going to look to ISIS, who is fighting the same enemy that they originally entered into battle against, Assad, in common cause?
Well, Senator, there's no fail-safe, obviously. As I said earlier in answer to an earlier question, our guys have gotten much, much better at the vetting, and now that we're doing the training to some degree and hopefully do it openly, we're going to be in a much better position to do command and control, to do much greater in-depth accountability, if you will. In the end, there probably will be some strange bedfellow moments in the course of this kind of battle. It'd be crazy if I sat here and just said to you, oh, it'll never happen, as nobody's, you know. These are exigencies and circumstances that we don't always control. But by and large, we are beginning to get a much better handle with other players in the region on the funding streams, for instance, to al-Nusra. Different countries that have played the angles with certain groups are now coalescing together, and we see a shift. And I think that's going to be to our benefit to be able to exercise at least a greater amount of control. Fail-safe, I can't sit here and promise you that, but we're going to do the best we can. Now, let me just say to you, all of you here, a couple of things. One, the House just passed the Syria Train and Assist and Equip bill, and obviously we hope, the House having done that, that the Senate will follow suit in short order. I also want to just correct one thing I said earlier. I was talking about the JPOA, the agreement, and John's gone, but I just want to emphasize, I didn't mean to say we didn't have any inspection before. We didn't have daily inspection. We had some inspection through our process, but now we have the daily, and we didn't have a sufficient level to have guarantees at a place like Fordow that we had a comfort level. One other thing, can I just say, because you raised this, Senator Murphy?
It's fine. I have one.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead. I'll answer it.
Well, here's I guess my only follow-up is this. If I understand that they're going to be strange bedfellows, but to the extent that the strange bedfellows are the Free Syrian Army fighting alongside al-Nusra, which is a wing and affiliate of al-Qaeda, I hope that is not a reality that we're prepared to accept. We have had all sorts of talk about ISIL, but it's important to remember that the only major terrorist organization that has plans and stated intentions to carry them out against the United States today is al-Qaeda. So I just want to make sure that we have a specific focus on that particular set of strange bedfellows. I'm
with you 100%, and we will, to the greatest degree possible, absolutely. But what I wanted to say to everybody here is, you mentioned something very important a moment ago, which was about ISIL being a terrorist state and so forth. This is one of the things that I ran into very strongly with all the meetings I had in the region. And I want to just share with you this, that one of the key parts of this strategy is to not ever give them the legitimacy that they're trying to seek as to being a state. They have no legitimacy. They're not an Islamic state. And they're not in the vein of any other state in the country, in that region, that tries to give meaning to the concept of Islamism as they celebrate it with their citizens in their countries. And this is important for us because, you know, Islam doesn't produce, no legitimacy in Islam produces the butchers who killed Stephen Sotloff or David Haynes or, you know, Jim Foley. That's not Islam. And Islam is not ISIL. And increasingly, all of the voices in the region are really starting to feel that they have a need to speak out and to reclaim Islam. And that's one of the most important things that could come out of this. And we're working on ways to do that. So ISIL is not a state, obviously. You know, it isn't remotely like a state. And what we need to do is make that more clear. So let me just share with you two important things. The Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, the home of Mecca and Medina, which, by the way, are in the target scale of ISIS. These are Islam's most holy cities. They, days ago, said of these murderers, they are enemy number one of Islam. That comes from the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia. And today, Saudi Arabia's top clerical council, all 21 members, the only institution in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that is authorized to issue fatwas, invoking Muhammad, using the words of the Quran itself. Today they said that ISIL are killers, they are thugs, they should be singled out and punished as apostates under Sharia and made an example of. And they said they were not following the Prophet, but that these are their words, not mine, they are following the order of Satan. Now, that's what you're beginning to hear from the region, and that's a key part of this strategy. And obviously, we don't have the legitimacy to do what people in the region can do to delegitimize, but we're certainly going to do everything in our power to help encourage that and make sure that people are aware of it.
Senator Paul.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. I agree with you and with the President that we must confront and destroy ISIL. I think that, you know, I'm well on record as being very skeptical about our interventions in the Middle East. I think that the original war in Iraq has led to more chaos and less stability. I think the President's war in Libya, as well as your intervention in Syria, have led to less stability and more radical Islam throughout the community and have actually enabled ISIL. I do also and have been a frequent critic of Secretary Clinton for not providing adequate security, though, for Benghazi and for the consulate. So I do think that there is an American interest in defending our embassy in Baghdad as well as our consulate in Erbil, and I want there to be some message going forward from this hearing today that there is obviously bipartisan support for defending American interests in Iraq. However, I am very disappointed, though, in the President for not obeying the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear. It gave the power to declare war to Congress. And you can say, hey, we're going to come back when it's convenient, but we're going to be committing war for the next 3 or 4 months, and we'll do as we please. That's not what the Constitution intended. The interesting thing about the creative logic that's used to say that a vote in 2001 has anything to do with today is that it seems to be acknowledged that, well, that allows us to do anything with forces that may be associated with terrorism or al-Qaeda. One of the interesting things is, if you look at Ambassador Ford's testimony, he will say that moderate forces have and will tactically coordinate with al-Qaeda linked to al-Nusra. So the interesting thing, if we use your logic and say the 2001 AUMF can be used to justify this, well, the 2001 AUMF could be used to justify going after the moderate Syrian rebels who are associated with al-Qaeda. So I think really anybody who's intellectually honest would say that the people who voted in 2001 to go to war with the people who attacked us on 9/11, the people congregated in Afghanistan, has absolutely nothing to do with this. And really this committee, Congress, Senate, and the President are all abdicating their responsibility to vote for a new use of authorization of force, and that what you are doing now is illegal and unconstitutional. I think also from a practical point of view, it would be better to bring the country together. I think we would galvanize more support. It would be a bipartisan war. And had the President been a great leader, he should have come before a joint Congress. Instead of going on TV, should have come before a joint Congress and immediately asked for a resolution, and there should have been a vote. That would have been true leadership. There would have been true bipartisan support, and then really there would be less carping on both sides. The President also used to believe this. The President ran. It was one of the large reasons the public went for the President initially, is he said no President should unilaterally go to war without the authority of Congress. So I liked the President as a candidate on this issue, but not so much as a President. The other problem with this is that, you know, who are these moderate people? Are there really moderate Islamic rebels in Syria? Here's a quote, and I'd like your comment on this. Ryan Crocker, the distinguished former U.S. ambassador to both Iraq and Syria, said that the administration's knowledge about the non-ISIS opposition in Syria is that we need to do everything we can to figure out, this is Crocker, we need to do everything we can to figure out who the non-ISIS opposition is because, frankly, we don't have a clue. You know, most of the weapons we've been giving to the moderate rebels, they're sort of a stopping place. That's where they stop briefly before ISIS takes the weapons. Some of these, the Syrian National Revolutionary Front, have signed a ceasefire. Maybe not all of the vetted rebels are, but the Syrian Revolutionary Front has signed a ceasefire. So really, I argue, and I would believe, and I'd like to hear your comment, I think we have allowed there to be more of a safe haven for ISIL in giving weapons to the so-called moderate rebels, because really it's taken pressure off them. It's kept Assad at bay. And I think, contrary to what others have said here, had we bombed Assad last year, ISIL would be in Damascus. So I think we're lucky we didn't bomb Assad last year, and that we should be very careful about arming any Islamic rebels in Syria, because the weapons may not stay where they were intended, and they may have the unintended consequence of actually enabling ISIL. Your comments?
Well, we're not planning to, nor do we want to, nor have we armed Islamic folks in Syria. The United States doesn't do that, and we've opposed it, and Robert Ford will tell you that. And Robert Ford worked very hard to make sure that we weren't doing that. I also think it's good that you're going to hear from Robert Ford, because he will give you about as good an analysis of who the non-ISIS opposition is, and he'll break it down, point for point, because he did that for me on many occasions and articulated who they were and so forth. But he was also a passionate supporter of making certain that the moderate opposition got support, and he fought hard to get it more support than they did get. Absolutely. So I think he should do that for you. But let me just make it clear that I'm glad that you can guarantee that there would be a vote if the President sent something up here. I got 60 nominees. Some of them have been waiting more than a year to get a vote up here. And the chair and the ranking member have been terrific at helping to try to break them out. But they can't get a vote. So if you can tell the President you can absolutely guarantee a vote, I'd be really amazed.
I find it unbelievable that if the President came before a joint session of Congress and asked for use of force, that he wouldn't get a vote. I find it unthinkable. There's absolutely no way that you can imagine that he would not get a vote if he asked for it. So really, let's be honest. Politics are engaged here. People don't want to have a vote for the election. They're afraid of this vote. People are petrified, not of the enemy, but petrified of the electorate. That's why we're not having a
Well,
vote.
let me answer the first part of your question so that we make it crystal clear why the President is doing what he's doing. Because you are not insinuating, you are stating quite declaratively that the President has violated the Constitution. The President absolutely, clearly, by almost any legal standard that I can imagine, is not violating the Constitution. He's upholding it. Article 2 gives the President the power to do what he's doing. He has lived by the War Powers Act. He has sent countless notices up to the Congress. And I think every legal analysis suggests that while you may not like it...
If Article 2 gives unlimited power, why come at all?
Senator, let me just finish it off. Because he believes that the Congress ought to do this. And no one has...
But he doesn't believe he's bound.
The President has the right, as the President under Article 2, to defend this nation and to take the steps necessary to do so. The War Powers Act declares the terms under which you do that, Senator. You know that. And he has lived absolutely within that constitutional prerogative. Secondly, like it or not, and I can agree, I think you can find reasons to be uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it's not legal. And the chairman of this committee is appropriately going to try to recalibrate the AUMF, which we support entirely. We welcome the opportunity to have it recalibrated. It should be. But for the moment, the President believes we need to move now, and that is a full and appropriate exercise of constitutional power.
And for the record, that'll be after the election.
Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, for your testimony. It's been illuminating back and forth. I also want to thank Ambassador Ford and Mr. Conable, the written testimony that you each prepared, very instructive. I often walk away from hearings older but not smarter. I'm walking away from this one older and smarter, so thank you for that. Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for your comments at the beginning with respect to the authorization. A number of us feel like additional congressional authorization for the mission as described by the President is mandatory. Some of us don't feel that, but all of us, I think, on both sides of the dais believe it's advisable. And your commitment to crafting that in an appropriate way is notable and important. I've introduced a draft, and others have as well, that we know will be forwarded to this committee as we look to try to put something together that is, in fact, bipartisan, and it should be. Based on the statements around the table today, it should be. An observation, tomorrow in Portsmouth, Virginia, a container ship, the MV Cape Ray, is returning to the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's a merchant marine ship with merchant marines and DoD personnel, and it's the ship that has been in the Mediterranean involved in the complete destruction of the declared Syrian chemical weapons stockpile. That's a good news day tomorrow. And I think it is something that we ought to just contemplate as we're thinking about U.S. power, that there was a diplomatic breakthrough that led to the destruction of one of the largest chemical weapons stockpiles in the world. The U.S. played a critical role in it. This committee played a critical role in it. The diplomatic breakthrough, a factor in that was the willingness to use military force. Diplomacy is important. Often you get a much better result if you are really willing to use military force. Some interpret what happened last year as the President stepped away from a red line. No, there was a red line. We will take action against you if you use chemical weapons. We were prepared to take military action. Had we taken military action, the best we were going to get from the mission as described was convincing the Assad regime not to use chemical weapons again. But we weren't going to get their complete destruction. Those chemical weapons still would have been out there, possibly have been seized by ISIL or other elements. What we now have, because of a willingness to use military force as a factor, is the complete destruction of a stockpile that is widely viewed as a real positive, especially by neighbors in the region. So as we move forward, diplomacy is important, credible military threat is important. Those things can work together. Mr. Secretary, you've talked a lot about this. We are very deeply concerned about the extent of the coalition, and we understand as it's still coming together, the purpose for the hearing today is not to describe every nation and what their role is, but just to sort of put it on the table for you and others, it is incredibly important that this coalition not just be vast, but that it also be public at the appropriate point, and that the participation of Arab nations, nations in the region, be public. They've often been willing to support the United States playing the lead in a financial way where they haven't wanted to be public in condemning atrocities within their own region. I don't think the American public, and I don't think Congress, will support the United States policing a region that will not police itself. And so it's critically important for the success of the mission and for the success of both getting bipartisan support and the support of the American public, that the coalition be vast, but especially with the nations in the region, that their participation not be, we'll help finance it, but we don't want to be public about it. They have to be full public partners for this mission to be successful. In addition, the importance of their public participation is critical to the success of the mission on the ground. Because if this is a campaign of the West against ISIL or the U.S. against ISIL, in a bizarre way, we will potentially legitimize ISIL even more. But if it is, and you read the quotes earlier that are helpful, if it is a public campaign by leaders in the region, whether they be religious leaders or clerics, and certainly nations, against ISIL. This is not about Islam. You are a profanation of Islam in what you are doing. So the more public that is, the more ISIL is delegitimized. And the ultimate success of this mission is not just a military success, it's a delegitimization strategy that will strip away the pretense that this is an organization that has anything to do with Islam, and demonstrating to the public that they need to back away from it and condemn it. And so that's why the coalition thing is so critical, and the public nature of the coalition is important. And if you would just want to comment on that briefly, please.
Well, no, Senator, look, you've said it, and I think I've said it in the course of the hearing. We completely understand that. We do not want this just to be, this is not just an American effort. That's one of the reasons why the President took the time to make sure that the Iraqi government was in place, that we were going to build a coalition, that we took the time to do what was necessary, because we all understand that no one is advantaged by this being perceived of as just an American effort, and it's not. And many other countries, France helped step up and bring people to Paris the other day for a larger conference. In Jeddah, Saudi Arabia hosted that meeting. And countries that had not sat at the table together for some period of time were at that table. One of the things that people really haven't, I think, sufficiently focused on in this story is the Iraqi story. I mean, Iraq was on the brink 2 months ago. And many people were talking about, oh my God, is it going to break up? Can it hold together? What's going to happen? We worked very, very closely with Iraqis, and Iraqis led that effort, all of them. The Sunni folks who had bitter feelings about what had happened in the last years came together, picked a new speaker. The Kurds, who had plenty of reasons to be mistrustful and not be certain of the future, came together and elected a new president. And that new president had the courage to choose somebody other than the current prime minister to say, you try to form a government. That could have faltered. It didn't. They came together, put together that new government, actually ratified the new prime minister. The new prime minister has been continuing to put the government together. His foreign minister was in Jeddah, was in Paris. So, this photograph I pointed out of a Kurd president, of a, Saudi Arabian foreign minister, of a Shia Iraqi foreign minister, all together conferring about how they are going to deal with ISIL, tells you the story of an amazing transformation that has taken place. And I think people need to recognize that that's a big step forward. Now we have to build on it. The second thing I just say about the Cape Ray coming back, I want to thank your people. I wish you would extend the huge gratitude of the administration and of the world for this incredible job well done. And you're absolutely correct. The president announced he was going to strike. We'd already been talking with the Russians and others about how to get the weapons out, and then the deal came together and took away the necessity for the president to make a judgment he still would have made, whether or not to strike under his constitutional power based on the announcement he made. But clearly, getting 100% of the declared weapons out, we still have some questions about a few other things, but 100%, 1,300 tons of weapons out completely and destroyed is the first time that has ever happened in a time of conflict in any part of the world. And I'll tell you, ask Prime Minister Netanyahu, ask people in the region, they will tell you they are safer. You have an X factor that has now been eliminated from this whole equation of what we may or may not do in Syria as a consequence of that action.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, and thank you for the excellent work which you're doing, Mr. Secretary. Turkey. Turkey doesn't want to become part of our combat operations because ISIL has hostages from Turkey. But at the same time, Turkey has become the destination for the oil, which has been captured by the ISIL army in both Iraq and in Syria. And it's upwards of $1 million to $3 million a day, $300 million to $1 billion in the course of a year. In fact, the smuggled oil has now become the lifeblood of the ISIL army. So talk a little bit about Turkey and what our efforts are going to be to just shut this down, because without that money, they don't have the money to produce Hollywood-style videos. They don't have the money to pay their soldiers. They don't have the money to take care of these cities and towns that they're taking over. Talk about what we have to do with Turkey to just get them to shut this down.
Well, Senator, it's a very, very relevant question, and one that we're working on very hard, obviously. We really do understand the sensitivities that Turkey has. I don't want to talk about it too much publicly, to be honest with you, because of that. I think we're better off having a classified conversation about this. But I have hopes that as we move forward here over time, that the current dynamic may be able to shift in a way that will help us deal with that a lot more. Turkey understands the challenges, believe me, and we've had some very candid conversations about it. But Turkey will have to make its decisions in the days ahead, and we'll see what happens.
It's unconscionable that Turkey has become the principal source of funding for ISIL. And if we can shut that down, we do almost immeasurable damage to their ability to finance this war. And I just think we have to put Turkey right front and center and have the world say to them, they must stop. Let me move on. The language which is in the resolution says that one of the goals is to promote the conditions for a negotiated settlement to end the conflict in Syria. We'll be voting on that. So Experts are saying that it will take upwards of 3 years to resecure the border between Iraq and Syria. And experts are also saying that it will take up to 10 years to create the conditions on the ground in Syria to bring Assad to the table in order to, in fact, have a negotiated settlement. So I would ask you to talk about those two timelines that experts are talking about realistically, given the weakness of the Free Syrian Army, how long it will take to build them up, how long it will take for us to push the ISIL army out of Iraq. And the American people, I think, want to know how long we are going to be engaged in this effort towards that end game.
Well, let me talk macro in a sense here, Senator, if I can. First of all, I have read various accounts of summaries of various experts, some of whom are experts and some of whom are called experts. And there's only one expert right now that I'm looking to, and that's General John Allen. He has the responsibility here. He's putting together his team very rapidly. He's having meetings. And I will listen to him very carefully before I start pushing out timelines. Now, that said, President Obama has already said it's going to take a number of years to do the broad-based effort that we're at. And when I say that, you know, I think you can do a lot to ISIL fairly quickly, and then you have a longer fight as you begin to really go into the you know, full destruction and defeat mode, so to speak. But I got to tell you, and this is something that I expect to be talking about more with this committee and with Congress over the course of the next months, the fight of our generation is a combined fight against the immediate challenge of radical religious extremism and its exploitation in various parts of the world, and large unemployed populations of young people without good governance surrounding them and without opportunity, without dignity, respect. And this is a challenge we face, all of us, and all countries that consider themselves, you know, developed and near developed and civilized. It's our challenge. And we need to figure out how we're going to do all the things we need to do. And this is part of what President Obama talked about when he went to West Point, and about the focus on counterterrorism and the need to talk more as we go forward in the days ahead about exactly how we're going to fill out the full agenda of our country to be safe in the long term. It is a big, long-term operation, and that part of it is going to take years, and the United States, I think it is clear, is going to have to help lead that effort, and that's going to require a different attitude about foreign policy and engagement than a lot of people have been willing to embrace. I look forward to that discussion very much, and we're doing our homework to be able to come to you with thoughtful ideas about how we can deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We're very fortunate to have you as the person sitting in that seat. Thank you.
Well, you are, because you're now in my seat.
The most fortunate of them all.
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you for your engagement here today. You became the Secretary of State at a time in which I've never seen in 22 years in the Congress a confluence of challenges globally as they exist right now. The topic we've been discussing here for the last 3 hours, the challenge of ISIL, Russian invasion in Ukraine, the challenges of Ebola in Africa, the reality of our continuing challenge with Iran and its search for nuclear weapons, and the list goes on. And your service, it comes at an extraordinarily important time, so we want to salute you. I do want to make one or two final comments. Number one is this is going to be an issue in which more information and a steady flow of information and briefings will be critical to having the congressional understanding and the ultimate support for what I believe is our mutual mission to defeat ISIL. I just want to say that on various occasions you legitimately said that we need to have some of these conversations in classified settings. I will say that I look forward to and intend to hold those classified hearings, but I hope it's going to be as robust so that when we get into a classified hearing, we don't have to hear, well, I can't talk about that in that context. That will be problematic. Secondly, there have been many, I don't question anybody's intentions here. I always believe that there are many legitimate questions. And there are certainly legitimate questions when we think about putting America's sons and daughters into harm's way. We are strongest in the national challenge that we face when we speak with one voice, as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents together as Americans. And it is that unity of purpose, I think, that will be critical, a critical element of our success against ISIL. This is a moment in which politics must stop at the water's edge. This committee for the last 2 years has taken on a whole host of major foreign policy and national security challenges in a bipartisan way. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to come together again to do that in this most critical case. I think we can. And finally, I remind those who are concerned about the use of U.S. military might in a foreign country that we face the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. I don't know how you negotiate with an entity that beheads Americans. So thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your testimony engagement, for what I expect will be a continuing engagement. And before you have a parting word, I do want to urge colleagues, we have an important panel coming up with a lot of information. I hope members will be able to stay or come back. Mr. Secretary.
I'll be very, very brief. Just thank you very much. I look forward to having those discussions. And one coda, I think you know this, I long believed as chairman that the chairman and ranking member should have the same input as the chair and ranking member of the other committees, Armed Services, et cetera, Intel, because of the policy considerations. And I have advocated for that within this administration. And it's something that I think ought to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
We appreciate your testimony. Let me call up our second panel today as the Secretary leaves. The committee will come to order.